Hey everyone, as promised, today I'm going to talk about my own ability to see spirits. As we used to say back in the day, ghosts. Yeah. I can remember at a very, very, very young age being able to see ghosts. It used to scare the living daylights out of me. My grandmother had a little house on the side of this hill called Billy Goat Hill in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's where one of the civil battles was fought. They thought they were on Missionary Ridge, but they were in the wrong place. And so part of that battle was fought on this Billy Goat Hill. Named Billy Goat Hill because one side was so steep that nothing could be on it but billy goats. You know how old folklore goes. Anyway, her house was used as a gun shack back in the war. And there was so much activity in that area. I used to walk up the side of the hill to the top, and there were still, the trenches from the war were still there. To this day, they are still there. Anyway, when I would spend a night with my grandmother, I would tell myself, I am not looking at her closet. I will not look at her closet. Every night, in the middle of the night, I'd wake up with my eyes wide open, staring directly at that stupid closet. It used to be a chimney, long, long time ago, and she'd converted it to a closet. The fireplace was gone, but the chimney was still there. She had a curtain across it with a pole inside to hang all of her clothes. Out from that closet would come men and women. It would be man, woman, completely dressed in white, and there was no space between them. They were like so side by side. They would come out and circle the bed. Now the bed was against the wall, the head of the bed, but it didn't matter. They circled the entire bed. It would scare me so bad. I would cover up my head until I fell back asleep. You know, when you're a really small child, and I say I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, not any older than that. When you see things like this and you talk about it at that age, the adults dismiss you. Whether they've seen it or not, whether they've felt things or not, those kind of things weren't talked about, and it was dismissed. So I learned not to talk about it. There were so many things that happened in that house. At night, she would go to bed, and I'd stay up watching TV, of course. And as soon as it got dark, I had to close all the curtains because her house was surrounded by woods. And I could feel eyes piercing through the windows staring at me. It would literally freak me out. And there are some questions I wished I had asked my grandmother, but I never did. From the living room was a kitchen. The sofa was against the wall that you could see directly into the kitchen. There was a door to the kitchen, and it had a lock on it. One of those latch hook locks. You know what I mean? And as soon as it was dark and I closed those curtains, I could not sit there until I closed that kitchen door, because at the very, very back of the kitchen, it felt like something very evil was staring at me. Oh my goodness. I would jump up, pull the door shut, and lock it. Later in my years, I wondered, why was there a lock like that on the kitchen door? The door would shut as normal, but why was there a lock on there? What was the purpose of that? It was to the kitchen. What is it that Grandma was not telling me? Anyway, you would have laughed, because to get back into my grandmother's room when I was ready to go to bed, I would run from one room to the next, turning lights on and off, because I did not want to be left alone in that house in the dark. And as soon as I got to her room, I would switch off the light and jump right over her onto the other side of the bed. And every night, those spirits would come out and circle the bed. Now in my older years, I believe that those spirits were there to protect us from the other things that were in that house. So many other things went on. There are so many stories from my mother's childhood that are just unbelievable. Like, something had scared one of their dogs so badly that it ran straight through the screen door and ended up being blind. There's a case where one of my uncles was walking home one day and a fireball appeared behind him and chased him up the road. He took the trail to my grandmother's house, but the fireball went straight up the road and then disappeared in front of the house. Pretty unbelievable. But I've seen some of these things. I didn't see that, but some of the other things I have seen myself. You just didn't talk about these kind of things back in the day. You saw them, you heard them, you felt the presence, but you didn't talk about it. So, as I got older, there were things all the time that were happening. I remember going to sleep one night in another house, my own house. I was probably about 14. In the middle of the night, I heard this grumbling, growling voice. And it was a voice. It wasn't like an animal at all. You could tell it was a voice. And then heavy breathing followed. Scared me to death. So I covered up as though, the blankets are going to protect me. And I guess at some point I finally fell asleep. I woke up the next morning with a light on. I know for a fact that light was not on when I went to bed, because I remember being there completely in the dark and trying to look around the room to see what I could see when I heard that growl and that voice and the breathing. That light was not on, but I woke up and the light was on. What could it have been? And as I got older, there were more and more things that I could see and more things that I could feel. And most of my life, I held those things in. I kept them to myself. I would not dare speak of them because, well, what would other people think? They would think you're crazy, wouldn't they? Most people don't believe in that kind of stuff. But I can see things. And I don't understand. I don't know why I can see them and other people cannot. I am intuitive. And I am more sensitive, I think, than a lot of other people. And all the doors in my mind are open. I talk about that in other videos, about your mind being a hallway full of doors. Some of these doors are open, some of them are closed, some of them are locked. And some of them are there, but you don't even see them. You don't even know they exist. Well, my doors are all open. And I know they all exist. So I can see and sense and hear and feel things. I've had many instances. I moved into a new house. Well, it wasn't new. It was built in 1900 in Illinois, but it was new to us. And the second day I was there, I was on the second floor putting our bed together in the master bedroom. And there was a third floor. And I heard someone coming down the stairs from the third floor, and it sounded just like my youngest daughter. Child, her size, her footsteps, certainly not my older two. And without looking up while I'm working on the bed, I said, "What is it, Michaela? What do you need?" I didn't hear a response, so I looked up, but it wasn't Michaela. It wasn't my daughter. It was another girl. I could see her just as though I could see my daughter. She was probably about the same height. Her hair was really long that came down probably to the bottom of her back. Long, dark hair. And her clothes were gray and white. And her dress came down to at least her ankles. And she stood there looking at me as surprised as I was looking at her. We just glanced at each other for a moment, and then she was gone. Completely gone. Now in that house, so many things happened. It wasn't just me that could see and hear things. It was all of us. I remember one night, there were distinct footsteps upstairs. We were all downstairs in the same room. There was no one else in the house. We all kind of freaked out about that one. And I remember for several nights in my own office in that house, there would be lights. Okay, I had blackout blinds in that office, and they were all closed. There was no way any light source could come into that room. But it was like little balls of light that would travel all around the room, around the ceiling and the walls. And we sat there for probably about an hour watching them with no idea what it really was. This has been my life. I see things, I hear messages. Quite often I freak out my friends when I bring up something that they know I shouldn't know about. I give them warnings. I remember at work one day, one of the other co-workers had walked down the hallway into her office, and I saw a man following her. So I went up to her and I described this man, and she said to me, "That's my grandfather." And I said, "Well, he gives you a warning. Pay attention when you're driving." I asked her, does she blank out when she drives? And as though, when you go in autopilot, you go through lights, and after you've gone through the light, you wonder, was that red or green? I don't even know anymore. Or you'll make it all the way home, but don't even remember the journey home. You just suddenly know you're home. That's that autopilot kicking in. She says, "Oh my God, I do that all the time." I said, "Well, you need to be very careful not to do that. Watch what you're doing." So later that day, she went to lunch, came back completely frazzled, and told me that if she had not been paying attention like she normally does, this lady had pulled out right in front of her, and she was inches away from smashing into her. But she was trying to be more attentive and pay more attention because of what I said. And she saw the lady coming and was able to stop. It wasn't me. It was her grandfather that came to give her that warning. I told her one night exactly how her bedroom was set up and what side of the bed she sleeps on. Described her room completely without ever being in her home, because her grandfather showed it to me. Those are the things that come to me. That's the way I see spirit. I can see sometimes a complete figure. Sometimes I just hear a message. Sometimes they just give me a picture, something that I can relate to. It comes in many, many different forms. And as soon as I stopped hiding it and started talking about it and delivering the messages, the more clear they became, the less afraid I was, the more open I became, and the more messages that came through. That's my story. That's how I do it. Why I have this gift? I don't know. Why don't you have it? Again, I don't know. You might. You have to just check those doorways in your mind. See if they're all open. See which ones are closed. But let me warn you, you don't know what's on the other side. And once you open the door, it's open. Have a great day, everyone. And don't be afraid to be that strange one, the weirdo, the one that sees things and hears things. It helps a lot of people. Have a great day, and remember, Spirit loves you.